Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Brewing. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. Next week is kind of a little bit of a light week, Rick, because it is All-Star Baseball week, so we won't have a lot of, we'll have some Reds to talk about because there'll be a break in the action. Bengals training camp is actually less than 2 weeks away as we record this podcast, so we'll move a little bit closer to that. And actually, I believe by the time we do this podcast next Thursday, the Bengals Ring of Honor honorees will be announced. They're usually announced on the Thursday before the start of camp and usually in the morning. So we will have that for next week as well. But we got a lot to get to this week.
Yeah, plenty of stuff here, especially Reds related. The Reds went 3-4 since we last spoke and are 44-49 overall as we're recording this, although they're going to have a first pitch here in about an hour.
Yeah.
They are tied with the Cubs for last in the NL Central. They're both 10 games behind the Brewers. Skinny, we've got a few different things to hit on, like I mentioned, but if you're talking about this Reds team right now, no matter where you are in the country, you're talking about rookie outfielder Rece Hinds. He has made quite the impression over his first 3 games since being called up to start the week. He became the first player in MLB history to record 5 extra base hits in his first 2 career games. And before he got the call, the crazy thing about this was he was hitting just .216 and striking out over 38% of the time in nearly 300 at-bats in Louisville. So a couple questions about this. First of all, when I say rookie debuts for Reds players, I'm not just talking about the first game. I'm talking about that stretch when they initially come up and they have that run and we talk about, oh, look at this debut they're making like we are with Rece Hinds. What's the gold standard for that? Is there a guy that comes to mind?
Aristides Aquino? I mean,
I always think about the Jay Bruce.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it felt like for like 10 straight days he was on fire. And maybe I'm wrong on the exact details of that, but I remember it being like almost a week or more that it seemed like he was just on fire before he started to cool off a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Ellie hit the ground running pretty quick. In fact, Rece Hinds, while he did not hit a home run Wednesday, Rick, he did become just the 3rd player since 1901 to have a single, double, triple homer and stolen base in his first 3 games. The other 2, Ellie De La Cruz last year and a guy named Bill Bruton back in 1953 for the Milwaukee Braves. So even on a night when Rece Hinds, all he did was single and steal a base, he has accomplished another feat, for goodness sakes.
As a Reds fan, how should you feel right now? I mean, obviously it's fun. It's fun to watch what he's doing, and you hope it continues as long as possible.
And they need it.
But what is the reaction to Rece Hinds? Should it be like, oh, don't get too over the top about this because they weren't expecting a lot from this guy and he wasn't performing very well at AAA? Or should you have the hope that maybe this is the punch in the arm that this team needed on the offense and in the outfield?
It is, but then the question is, how long does it last? I mean, the strikeout rate, to your point, in AAA was high. Even the year before in Chattanooga, he actually had over 900 OPS and had, I think, 26 homers and 98 RBIs in 107 games and another like almost 30 doubles. So he does have pop in his bat, but the strikeout rate is high. The batting average has never been all that high, but they needed this. I mean, they needed somebody to provide some kind of right-handed hitting power and offense, and he's done it. I mean, the question is he going to be Aristides Hinds or Rece Aquino? I mean, is it going to eventually become what Aristides Aquino was? I mean, you remember that stretch. It is like, okay, he can't do it again. And he did. Oh, no, he can't hit another home run today. Oh, yes, he did. Oh, well, he can't do it for 3 weeks. No, but he did. And then all of a sudden it went. Now, the one thing I will say the difference is Aquino was pretty much a career minor leaguer at that point and kind of clearly came out of it. Rece Hinds has steadily moved up the charts, and he was a 2nd-round pick of this team back in 2019. So they've thought highly of him. The numbers haven't completely been awful except for this year at Louisville. But then the question is, because that strikeout rate, how long will it last? And he's struck out, I think, 4 or 5 times up here already.
Yeah, I think he's had 12 at bats. He's like 6 for 12. Now he does have the strikeouts, but he has all these extra base hits too as well. 5 out of his 6 hits have been extra base hits. One of the things that when I look at the first few games, I see he's going up against the Colorado Rockies pitching staff, which is horrible. And if you watch some of the balls that he has absolutely smashed, they are pretty fat pitches. They are up out over the middle of the plate, up in the zone a little bit, where he can do something with them. At the same time, I go into like Baseball Savant, and I'm looking through some of the details on the play-by-play of the type of pitches he's hitting. Skinny, these aren't all fastballs. It's not Aquino where he can't hit anything but a fastball. In fact, most of these pitches that he's had his big hits on have been breaking balls. So how do you weigh that? Like, are you concerned about his ability to hit the breaking pitch, or are you more like it's the Colorado Rockies pitching staff, and that's why he's having success.
You know what I say? This is just baseball. Again, this isn't a guy that was completely off their radar. He was highly regarded as a draft pick. He hasn't, his progress hasn't been 3 years at Dayton and then maybe a year at Chattanooga. It's kind of been up the chain a little bit. I mean, you could argue that maybe he was just simply swinging a cold bat at Louisville. I don't think that. I mean, I'm always alarmed at the high strikeout rates, and I shouldn't be because everybody strikes out in baseball today. But if you're striking out at an alarming rate in the minors, eventually I think that'll catch up to you in the major leagues. That said, he does have power. You can see it in the numbers he's had in the minor leagues. And the home runs haven't been, fly balls that just barely got inside the foul pole down the left field line, right? I mean, they've been absolute bombs, 449 and 448. He's hit two of the longer home runs the Reds have hit this season. So I don't think it will be sustainable. I don't think you're going to talk of Rece Hinds at the end of this year having 1,000+ OPS with 20 some odd home runs. But they needed something in the short term, and they've gotten that. And good for him for taking advantage of it too.
I think that difference that you pointed out between how he and Aquino were viewed is significant. And again, I said Rece Hinds, they weren't necessarily expecting a lot from him when they called him up, but I'm saying that because of what he had done in AAA to that point, and he's not one of the most highest rated prospects in the Red system right now. But at the same time, they do view him as an up-and-coming prospect still, whereas with Aquino, like you said, it was kind of already past that point. And even when you were watching Aquino, it didn't really add up. Like, he didn't exactly look the part, even though he was hitting the ball a mile. It was kind of more Willie Mo Pena-esque, where it was like he was a sideshow or a circus act. Whereas you're watching Rece Hinds, I mean, the way he's hitting the ball the other way down the right field line for the double or triple. And Barry Larkin's funny. He keeps saying he's like 6'4", 240 pounds. Like, on his roster, it says only 6'4", 215, but he is a big athletic guy that moves well, is running the bases well, just looks like a ball player overall. So it's hard not to get excited about what he's doing right now and think about maybe he could be the injection this team needs, especially with some of the guys coming back like we're going to talk about here in a minute. Maybe this is enough to give this team a little more punch to stay in it to the rest of the way.
And I mean, again, I made fun of Stuart Fairchild last week, and then he goes and has 2 great catches on Friday night. But I mean, the guy just doesn't hit. I mean, he doesn't hit at all. And you needed something. And they the funny part is they made that trade on Sunday night for Slater from San Francisco, and Hinds came up basically to fill the spot until Slater could get here. And suddenly, Hinds you got to keep putting him in the lineup. I mean, you can't not ride the hot bat at the moment. So they knew they needed to upgrade something right-handed, and plus Stuart Fairchild got hurt, so you needed to kind of fill that roster spot. And this, in the short term at least, has been a good answer. The unfortunate part is if he stays hot through Sunday, let's just say, the unfortunate part would be, damn it, the All-Star break might snap him out of it, for goodness sakes. But again, good for him for taking advantage of it. I don't think it's sustainable, but I don't think it's out of the question that he's not a major league player. I mean, again, there's a lot of better guys than 540 OPS and Stuart Fairchild, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, now he may start striking out a ton. That's quite possible. Like you said, a lot of guys do that, but he is not overmatched phizically in any way. No. He looks like he's got the right type of approach. It's going to be fun to watch the next few weeks and see how he battles through the pitchers making the adjustments against him.
Yeah, and I have not seen his splits in Louisville to see what it was lefty versus righty, but maybe at the very least, he's a right-handed bat against left-handed pitching moving forward. And okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, they need it. One of the other topics of conversation with the Reds was the All-Star situation. They have 2 All-Stars, as it turns out. Elly De La Cruz was originally named to the team, and then Hunter Green was added as a replacement. They'll both be in Arlington on Tuesday for the game. Skinny, if I would have told you a year ago at this time that both Elly De La Cruz and Hunter Green were going to be All-Stars the following season, would you have expected the Reds to be 10 games out of first place in the NL Central?
No. The answer to that would have definitely been no, because that would have shown you the progress that both players had made, for goodness sakes. And I guess that's the positive to all this. I will say this, and good for Hunter Green. I wrote a column on Friday and listed 5 potential Reds All-Stars and who would probably make it, because they were only going to get one until the injury occurred that opened up the spot for Hunter Green, and that was Elly, and he was the logical choice. But out of the 5 candidates, Hunter Green was one of those 5, obviously, and Andrew Abbott's another. I'll be honest, again, Hunter Green is more electric, right? He's got a higher strikeout rate, although Andrew Abbott gets his share of strikeouts. Go look at Andrew Abbott, some of his metrics. They're actually better than Hunter Green.
Well, it's funny with Hunter Green this year because he is unquestionably better than he's been
Yes.
in,
Yes.
in prior seasons. But his strikeouts are down. His strikeouts to walk ratio is down. Like when you look at the advanced metrics, they don't necessarily jump out at you as, oh, he's made these massive strides, but his whip has improved. His ERA has improved, obviously. And just the way, one of the things that I see from Hunter Green is when he doesn't have his A stuff, when it's not a day where he's going to go out and give you 7, 8, 9 strikeouts, he is still a pitcher now that can give you 5, 6 innings and keep you in a ball game where it's not like he's going to walk all these guys and give up a couple home runs and be out of the game in the 3rd or 4th inning after giving up 5 or 6 runs. It just seems like he's really matured as far as that goes. And when you look at last April, they signed him to that 6-year, $53 million deal. According to Spotrac, he's currently ranked 75th among MLB starting pitchers in annual salary. Meanwhile, those numbers that we're just talking about, ERA, whip, and I think all those can still improve. I think there's still upside with him. He's like top 30, top 25-ish in those numbers.
Well, go look at his go look at his WAR. I think last week when I wrote the column, he was either 3rd or 4th, and Abbott was either 4th or 5th. They were right next to each other in WAR, almost near the top of the list among pitchers. I mean, so that'll tell you a little bit of that as well. Yeah, I mean, even his most recent start on Saturday, the Reds came off the loss on Friday. You certainly didn't want to dig yourself another hole by losing game 2 of the series. And what does he do? He goes and throws 7 shutout innings. That's what a top of the line guy needs to do. Be the stopper, be the guy that sets you up to win. Unfortunately, David Bell set him up to fail because I did look. I don't know if you watched. They had to reattach his arm after the 7th inning because he'd thrown 104 pitches and it fell off, and that's why he couldn't go back for the 8th. So I just don't want anybody to be able to. I did see the surgery take place. The arm was reattached because he hit that magical number where your arm apparently falls off, and that's why you can't go back into a game.
Yeah, that's right. And Skinny, I'm sure you're a contact play guy too. I'm sure that didn't drive you crazy at all at the end of the game. So,
well, the Friday night game. I mean. Can Tyler Stevens have a better approach at the plate than that? I mean, goodness gracious, get the ball into the outfield somehow, some way. And actually, I think the first pitch to him in the bat was elevated, and he took it for a strike.
Just not great execution there in some of these recent end of game situations. But Skinny, as far as the All-Star game goes, I've heard people say they don't want these guys playing in it because of kind of going back to the home run derby thing. They're worried about these guys needing a break, needing a rest. Do you buy into any of that? What are your thoughts on these guys appearing in the All-Star game? Do you think that's cool at all?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, they're not playing 9 innings, and pitchers can't pitch more than 3 innings. And it works out, I think, good for Hunter because he's actually starting the game today as we do it on Thursday. That means he won't make another start between now and the All-Star break. And it falls really actually on the next day I believe he would have started as a pitcher is Tuesday. So I would say get him in an inning and be pretty cool. And, Ellie will get an at bat or two because he's a backup. He's not the starter. I mean, you may have an occasional starter in the All-Star game play, the whole time and get 4 at bats. It's very rare anymore. Almost every manager in the last, back in the day, I mean, these teams actually played to win, and some guys didn't even get in the game. These managers today, I mean, even though they've got 20 position players and 12 pitchers, you're not getting all 12 pitchers in just because of, it's hard to do that. And some guys may have just come off of a start on Sunday and it's not their day to throw, whatever. But they do get all the position players in. So yeah, Ellie plays 2, 3, 4 innings. It's not going to kill him to do that.
With Hunter, I think it's cool for him to make this All-Star game. And again, I know he understands the advanced metrics. I know his agent is basing his contract negotiations off those advanced metrics. They understand that win-loss record and run support isn't the end-all be-all. But when you're in a situation like he's been in this year where you're getting no help from your offense and you're not winning the games that you should be, even though you're pitching really well, it's pretty cool to get recognized for an All-Star game appearance like this. So I think that's good for him and his development. And with Ellie, I don't really care how long he plays. I do want him to get in, and here's what I want. I want him to get on first base any way he can, and then I want him to steal second and third and back-to-back pitches or within a couple of pitches because I want the rest of the world to watch how he does that to teams on a regular basis like it's nothing.
And I'll be honest, depending on what the score is, and maybe if it's a left-handed pitcher who decides to pitch out of the windup with him on third, how cool would it be to see him break for home?
Just set him home in an All-Star game. That would be a legendary moment.
It really would. It really would.
All right. In terms of the Red stuff, we've got just a few other things to hit on. Injury updates. We got news that Matt McClain began taking dry swings this week, and the plan is for him to start a minor league rehab assignment August 12th. Also, TJ Friedel should return within a week to 10 days after the All-Star break as he recovers from his hamstring injury. I guess good news, Skinny, but is it not enough or too little too late for this team?
No, because I don't think it is too little too late, because I think this pitching staff will keep them in it. I mean, Hunter Green's an all-star, and I'm not taking that away from him. But I mentioned, you can crunch some of Andrew Abbott's numbers, and they're actually better. And I think the best pitcher of the bunch is Nick Lodolo. So, I mean, you got three legit dudes in the rotation that if Lodolo can stay, if they all can stay healthy moving forward, and based on the way the schedule kind of sets up, you got a chance on paper to have the best pitching matchup each and every night you go out there, for goodness sake. So I do think as long as they can hang, they need to finish this off before the All-Star break to win the game today, to finish off the Colorado series and at least take 2 or 3 for Miami, if not sweep. If you do that, you're only a game under 500, and with the schedule being favorable, I think you got a chance to surge past that in the second half of the season. Friedel getting back will be a help. McLean, it sounds like will maybe at least get back for September. I think they've targeted August 12th for a minor league rehab assignment for him. So that gets him back for the last month. And I mean, at that point, I mean, if this team's hovering around a game and a half out of the wild card, I think Matt McLean can certainly help get you over that hump, and getting Friedel back, if he stays healthy the rest of the way, combined with that, can help you get over the hump. And I think it is kind of a big deal.
As much of a letdown as this season has been, and for the last month or so, it feels like they're teetering right on the cusp of, okay, it's over, I'm done watching, done paying attention to this group this year. It remains interesting to me, and there's this small part of me that wants to be really excited about the idea of them hanging around because of that pitching staff. Like, if they put themselves into the playoffs somehow, some way, that pitching staff is dangerous enough to make some noise. It really
I agree
is.
with that. Yeah, no question about it. I mean, you send out in a series right off the bat, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and Andrew Abbott, rather, you got a chance to win all those games.
I think so too. Finally, I want to wrap it up with this. A 4-part HBO documentary series on the life and career of former Reds legend Pete Rose will begin on July 24th. According to a press release about the documentary, it features intimate new interviews and footage of Pete Rose, chronicling his life and career in baseball. Extensive archival footage and contextual interviews from teammates, family, friends, and journalists detail Rose's heroic rise and subsequent banishment from the game, and years later, his bid for reinstatement and place in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So, Skinny, I ask you, will you be watching the Pete Rose documentary on HBO?
No, I will not be. I mean, what else new can there be? The only thing new that they could provide is proof that he bet while playing for the Reds in the 70s. And there is a lot of smoke around that. If they want to provide me something new, I mean, what's going to be new about this? I mean, I guess it's new to maybe a new audience, if you will, but for I lived it. What's going to be new to see that's going to be fascinating, I guess?
Well, I don't think it will be fascinating for people of your generation for the most part that were there for it. I think it'll be more a nostalgia play there. But I think we've seen this done with like the Jordan Bulls documentary that went super viral a year or two ago.
Well, part of that was because it was the only thing we could watch during COVID.
That's a good point. That's part of it. But also it was just we all know what happened, but it's an interesting figure, and seeing Michael Jordan in there commenting on it was somewhat interesting. Pete is prone to say some crazy things, so yes, you could get a good soundbite out of him potentially. The other question is, I mean, he is one of the more controversial figures maybe at this point in Cincinnati sports history, or complicated, I guess. There's a lot of layers to the legend that is Pete Rose at this point. So I guess if it's not like a PR fluff piece and they really dive into some of this stuff, especially for the younger people that didn't see his entire career and weren't around for it, maybe there could be some interesting parts to it from that angle. But I imagine for people of your age that lived through it, there's probably not a lot of new stuff here. I can't imagine they're like diving into like the underage sexual allegations or anything like that too much.
Yeah, and maybe they do, and maybe they uncover some new things that are interesting. But I mean, I remember it vividly. Nothing I'm going to see, and that's going to be anything really new to me, in my opinion. I was there to watch him have 4192. I was there to watch a good chunk of his career as a kid. I know the good and the bad of Pete Rose. I like the good of Pete Rose, and the bad, I just look at him as a flawed human being like all of us are. And there's really nothing new to that. Again, the only thing they could do new is that they unearth some of the stuff from the 70s that maybe proves he bet on baseball in that time frame, or was something along those lines. But I don't think we're going to see that. And again, I will say this: if I find out from people that it was super interesting, I can always go back and watch it on a streaming thing.
Yeah, I mean, I assume most of the local media types, everybody will be watching that, so it will be talked about a little bit. So from that perspective, I imagine we'll be hearing about it. But I'm interested to see what comes out of it, if anything.
You can always find our stories here on YouTube, but go ahead and click subscribe to get notifications and stay in the know.